Okay, I think we'll get started. So I'm excited to talk to you all today as the moderator for our panel, and I'm excited about the panelists that we have for today's discussion around winning strategies for AEP 2025. We have a good kind of cross section of folks from various who look at AEP and Medicare marketing a little differently based on what they do, even within our agency, within media and analytics, account folks. So before we get started, a little about Merge and who we are. Merge is an advertising communications company, and we work with about 18 different health plans throughout the country. Blue, non-blue, small health plans, big health plans, and all parts of the country. And at Merge, we say we like to merge storytelling and technology to promote health, wealth, and happiness to the world. And how do we do that? Well, we do that through a variety of services and products that we provide to our health plan clients, everything from strategy and brand planning and journey mapping to creative and branding and PR, to experience design, UX, UI, CX, media and analytics, performance marketing, demand gen, email, search engine optimization. And we work on a variety of different platforms, and we tend to specialize in a few of those, including Sitecore and Adobe. And with that, I'll get right to our panelists. And we'll start it out with Scott. If you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. My name is Scott Hoffman. I'm the AVP of Research and Insights at CompetiScan. For those unfamiliar with CompetiScan, we track direct marketing across the country for various industries, including health insurance, and then make that information searchable on our database. So I manage our health insurance side of the Insights team. And through that, we handle ad hoc requests that our clients submit, as well as the creation of trend reports for various health insurance topics, such as Medicare Advantage. I've been doing this for over 15 years now, and I'm excited to be part of this panel.
Great. Thanks. Morgan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Morgan Olson, analytics manager here at Unite Us, supporting our Insights growth product, which focuses on driving acquisition strategies and market insights for the Medicare Advantage space. So I'm excited to be here today and happy to talk through some of the things that we're excited to hear about.
Great. Glad to have you here, Morgan. Jason?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Jason Budelman, VP of Analytics here at Merge. So really maximizing data value in making sure that we're coming out of AEP with learnings and how we can be efficient and incremental with whatever we're doing with from a data standpoint, whether it's media, website, or the strategies that we're putting into market.
Great. Michelle?
Hi, everybody. Michelle Boudreau. I'm based here in Boston. I work for Jim, and my career has been exclusively healthcare and focusing on health plans since 2016. So with Jim, we lead an account service team that has experience working with 6 to 8 regional plans, everything from Medicare to Medicaid to individual to brand awareness and demand gen. And I'm happy to be here with you all today.
Great. And then lastly, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy Thompson. I am an SVP media lead in the East region. I've actually been at Merge for over 15 years, obviously working closely with Jim, Michelle, and Jason. And again, my team's responsible for actually, target insights and strategy work and putting actually clients into market. And we have extensive experience, as Jim has highlighted, against both national players like a Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP, as well as a lot of regional plans, specifically in the Medicare, as well as the individual space. And I'm happy to be here today.
Great. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I'll probably point the question to one of the panelists. And from there, if any folks have follow-up points that they want to make on that question, whether I directed it to them or not, feel free to do that. I also want to say to the folks at home, if they have a point that they want to make or a question that they want to put forward, they can put that in through the chat at the bottom of the Zoom there. So let's go. First question is kind of a general one, but important. And that is, what are some of the key market dynamics that are going to impact this year's AEP? And I'll pose that first to Michelle.
Alrighty, so I imagine the majority of the people on this call with us today have been following the financial reportings of the national players, and profitability isn't where it needs to be. We're seeing utilization is up, and it's likely to continue to stay up. The revenue streams, whether it's the new metrics for the star ratings, the risk adjustment, or the reimbursement, those are trending downwards. So we're seeing signs from the nationals that they need to make some changes. And as a marketer, I think there's really two impacts of that. So products will change likely, premiums will rise, supplemental benefits will become less rich, or maybe they're going to leave less profitable markets or geos. So for the consumer, that's really disruptive. That is going to erode their trust, their sense of confidence. And as we know, many consumers don't want to shop during AEP. It does feel risky, it does feel arduous. So as marketers, we have an opportunity to take advantage of this disruption and the changes in the plan benefits. However, we need to do it in a way that is going to earn the trust of the consumer, and we need to build an experience that is going to support them in building their confidence in making a decision. So really some important opportunities in emotional messaging as well as the product messaging. There's another thing I'm keeping my eye on, and I'm not sure that's going to come into play this fall, but CMS looking at capping the commissions for compensation for brokers. And we know such a large number of individuals like to use brokers. So capping that compensation could really be disruptive in that space. And even today, there was a report out saying that consumers that engage with a broker are likely to be more satisfied and likely to be more confident. So whether it's this fall or the somewhat near term, I think we need to be thinking about how we can fill that gap, that confidence building, that guidance that may disappear with changes in the broker space. Cindy, any?
Yeah, sure. So no, we're all well aware of it's yet another election year. It seems like just yesterday, and this one is expected, to have even higher spending, than the 2020 election. Spending is, expected to be upwards of plus 31% from last time. So I think it's important, for us to take that into consideration, particularly those in swing states where television and radio and, some of the linear broadcast options are, at risk of being preempted. Another concern is particularly seniors are, more interested and consumed with the election, given a lot of the topics on the table. So they're even more distracted. So we definitely have to think of some ways to, combat that, not only with our media, but our messaging and the types of ways we're looking to engage them in the fall. One of the things we like to keep in play is, through some depth research that we've recently seen, while shopping patterns are somewhat similar in the beginning part of AEP, what historically we've seen in the past in other election periods, there's more of a blip, post Thanksgiving, which we don't always see. So I think we'll look to, take advantage of some of those types of things, particularly as we're flighting our media and seeing how we're hitting goal. And then also having in mind, when we're not, able to clear, we're seeing, television particularly not clearing, we'll have to easily be able to pivot to some other digital types of options that have worked for us in the past.
Great. And Jason, From an analytics standpoint, what's your take on this year? I know there's been changes with what we can do with cookies and tracking and all that, but you want to chime in here on that?
Yeah, I think this is more of just my public service announcement and reminder that, cookies are finally going to be phased out, towards the end of this year in 2024. So obviously that creates some changes in terms of how you measure efficiency of campaigns and also what you're allowed to do with some of the marketing technology that exists through ad servers and things of that nature. So I think it just underlines the importance that we've seen many of our clients move towards a more first party data strategy, or at least a data strategy to able to circumvent that. So they will not be as impacted, but certainly it's the scariest thing as an analytics person to always hit reset on the odometer. So we will see some changes in some of our traditional KPI metrics as cookies get phased out.
Great. So we know a big factor in the success of health plans during AEP has a lot to do with product design, benefit design, and how those products and benefits appeal to customers and prospects. And we know, for example, Aetna had a banner year, and Humana and United maybe didn't have the same year that we've seen in the past. But I want to throw it out to the panel. And what do you see as expected benefit changes or trends that we'll see most likely in this year? And I'll start out, Morgan, if you want to field that.
Yeah, great question. I think, building off of some of Michelle's points as it comes to profitability, I think we're coming into a period of trade-offs when it comes to benefit offerings, because, we can't necessarily support the cost of lowest premium and all the supplemental benefits 100% of the time, right? So plans need to start weighing what sort of moves the needle in their market, particularly with competition and sort of this profitability question circulating as well. So, that said, looking ahead, I think understanding your market and what matters to your consumers, whether that be network flexibility, low overall costs, maybe a meal benefit, what really matters to them will be key. And this will sort of allow plans to design benefits that resonate with their market and help them grow membership despite sort of the competitive pressures. And nationals doing their usual national thing, full court press, competition, all that sort of stuff. Another point that I wanted to maybe touch on, just given Aetna's success this past year and sort of some of those crazy benefits that have been offered as of late, whether that's, dog walking or the health benefit that we saw from Aetna. I personally think that these are sort of shiny objects that will get people in the door, but won't necessarily make members stay long term. So I do think they're going to be offered more and more in coming years because they're, following the lead of nationals. But I personally don't think that sort of these benefits are going to resonate long term. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
Great. And I know, Michelle, you, myself, Cindy, we were out at the Rise show in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of discussion about this topic. But what's kind of your take from your clients and what you've been seeing in the marketplace?
I think, or I'll jump in here. From a creative standpoint, that's where my head has been the most, because I think we see a trend of a new benefit comes out. It was dental a few years ago, and then everybody chases the dental benefit and there's parity. And then we move to the flex card, and then everybody chases the flex card and there's parity. And where we're expecting maybe some diminishing of the supplemental benefits, I think we're going to be looking at a lot of parity. So for our clients, I think it's going to be critical to hone in on, of your supplemental benefits, what is the most attractive and motivating, but how are we going to tell that story in a new way that is going to feel fresh and while maybe the benefit is parity, feels different. My take a little bit on the impact of the Aetna situation with what I call the golf club benefit. I think CMS is going to be paying closer attention, and they're going to be looking more at what is the impact of that benefit on the health outcomes and in the efficiency of Medicare Advantage. I think there could be some further scrutiny on how we're doing our marketing of supplemental benefits. So looking forward to the challenge of differentiating in a likely parity year.
Great. Does Woogie the cat have anything to add?
I'm sorry, I forgot to ban the cat, so
No
that one was
worries.
Honeybee.
No worries. Working from home. So I'd like to bring in Scott here, and I know that Competi-Scan each year issues a report, AEP marketing analysis. And Scott, can you talk a little bit about that report and what were some of the major findings that Competi-Scan came up with from last year's AEP and how that might inform marketers' approach for this year?
Yeah, definitely. And I think piggybacking off of what was already said in terms of differentiating, we saw a lot of efforts to really focus on the provider arrangements that were available in local markets. In particular, Aetna was really effective at promoting their arrangement with Oak Street Health because CVS now owns Oak Street Health, and it's a very important acquisition of the last couple of years. But even outside of Aetna and that arrangement, seeing Humana, United Healthcare, Cigna, some smaller regional carriers really pushing the fact that they had some local network arrangements that were very important to consumers. And we've come to realize that provider access is very important to consumers. And I think that's being pushed a lot more. In addition to all the supplemental benefits, we're seeing a lot of spending cards that are being promoted, particularly when it comes to DSMP benefits. All the major players have a spending card now, and they're really promoting those. We're seeing a lot of just a lot of trying to really push the value-added benefits that are available, dental, vision. It was mentioned some of the the more unique benefits that are available that might not actually be marketed going forward, but it's interesting to see how they're really trying to stand out in a very crowded marketplace. And I think the network arrangements, that's going to be something that we're going to see a lot going forward, especially the co-branded efforts.
Right. So Morgan, can you talk about, DM, we know that we're in a more digital world and that impacts, all market segments, including Medicare. But can you talk about maybe some of the models that Unite Us uses to make sure that your clients get the most out of their DM spend? What are you doing to help inform health plans so they're smartest about their marketing money there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at Unite Us and within our Insights Growth tool, there are a variety of predictive models that our customers can use to help drive performance as it relates to direct mail. That said, a question that we often get from our customers is, which one should I use, or which combination of models should I use to drive the most performance for my campaign? And we typically advise those customers whose goal is to continue growing existing plan membership to use what we would coin as like the secret sauce, or maybe like the Krabby Patty secret formula. And what that is always start with the model that is reflective of your primary goal. So our customers typically will lead with their custom built, likely to be an AEP sale model, for instance, and that will be the primary lever that they're pulling for their direct mail campaign, so that they're finding those individuals and prospects that are most likely to convert. And then potentially from there, we're layering in an additional model that considers your campaign tactics or your messaging. So, for instance, that could be likely to respond to promotional mail. That's a model that we are currently redeveloping, or likely to prefer a $0 premium to align with the messaging on, say, like a postcard. We typically don't advise going much further beyond that, just because it starts to get too narrow and you're sort of limiting some of your opportunities there. But what we've seen is this modeling approach and this tactical approach. Our customers have outperformed their competition for 6 straight years with some of these tactics for DM. So
awesome. Jason, anything you want to add to that from a your analytics viewpoint there?
Yeah, I think that certainly when we can leverage a model and really use that to kind of hone the campaign and see what's working well, it's the best. But certainly, like there are times where we know we have certain clients where the population's maybe a little bit smaller when we feel like that you don't have that critical mass to model against. And you know, and it happens, but really in those cases, what we like to do is take the incrementality approach that even if we're just learning one thing about an audience, and sometimes we're augmenting the data collection a little bit with call tracking, just so we can learn from another touch point, you know, what's eliciting the greatest response. That's kind of like the pragmatic, I'd say, lowercase s segmentation approach or modeling approach, where we're just trying to learn a little bit, but obviously our preference is like, you know, when we have the data size of the audience to use the models that Morgan was referencing.
Great. So I want to go back to a point I mentioned before about the digitally forward nature of seniors that are aging into Medicare. Michelle, do you want to talk about that? You know, with the baby boom generation, the tail end of that aging in, how are we changing our approach, and how will we change our approach this year as we market to a more digitally forward senior?
Sure. So having the most recent cohorts entering Medicare, having them be more experienced in using digital in their everyday lives, social media, online banking, it's a great opportunity so that we can leverage digital media, which gives us some enhanced targeting tools and some improved cost efficiency. So making our budgets stretch further. And Cindy talked about it being the election year and the amount of noise and distraction that'll be there up until election day. So we have to be smart about the paid media usage and how deep we go during that period of time. But email represents a nice opportunity. We can do that on a very frequent basis at low cost. So we can take advantage of any serendipity of a senior having the appetite to think about their health plan, Medicare, and not always be focused on the election. So it's great for CPLs and specificity and extending your budget. When we follow the data, though, we're not seeing today the full realization of the digital channels when it comes to enrollment, your CPA cost, efficiency, and volume. So that's where we still need the direct mail, the DRTV to a certain extent. And why those traditional channels are successful is they drive a human connection. The phone call is the number one response. And we know this is my theme, confidence and trust. Seniors are looking for someone to help them feel confident in making their decision. So as we think about the digital channels, we need to design an experience that starts digitally, but drives to a human engagement. So for Merge, it's thinking about what is the channel, it's thinking about the ad types, when do we maximize click to call ads. It's also thinking about the landing page experience. Form fills are easy and you can stay anonymous if you're a senior and you don't want a phone call from a sales rep. But if you don't have the skilled outbound sales team, that's a really hard lead to convert. So really need to be selective in how we use digital media. I think it puts out there two things that we need to think about as marketers moving forward. And one is, okay, if we want to maximize digital, how do we build a nurture stream that can pull a senior through the funnel in that short AEP window? The second would be, how do we build online shopping experiences that can build that confidence and trust without the human engagement? So I think there's some things we need to do to fully realize the opportunity that digital media represents. But in the interim, like Morgan said, getting ever smarter about your direct mail strategy so that you can minimize your spend in that expensive channel, but maximize the output from the channel.
Yeah, and great points. And Cindy, do you want to
Yeah,
add
sure,
on?
I'll add to that. Sure.
Indeed.
So to the DM point, you know, when our audiences are large enough, we have, you know, obviously pushed uploaded, DM list and push them through some of our social channels, such as Facebook. But I think it's important, Michelle brought up, you still have to lean into, what works. And then continually test, some of the newer digital channels that are out there to see if they move, particularly the younger end of that senior audience that's more likely to switch. And as as you guys are starting to see, the amount of people that are watching linear TV and streaming TV is about similar right now, and more seniors are adopting those platforms. So we've been doing a lot more connected TV lately, more as an awareness vehicle than really a lead driver. But there's some new formats that are coming out that we plan to test this fourth quarter. And one of them is an interactive connected TV unit, which would really allow you to obviously, granularly target, the audience that you're going after in a particular zip code, but then potentially, drive them to, more information across certain benefits, or even potentially drive to a local event. Whereas Michelle mentioned, a lot of folks want to talk to someone. So after the phone and email, those in-person meetings are still important to this audience. So we'll be looking at those types of formats. Additionally, how do we tell the story in a different way? Connected TV is also offering some new in sports or live sports in programming creative units that allow you to kind of play off what's happening, in the sports program. So we'll be looking at some of those to stand out. Facebook click to call has always been a great driver of leads for us, as well as, continually looking to expand what Google has offered, such as Performance Max and Demand Gen. So those are some things we'll keep in mind, particularly, it allows us to pivot in and out of them, during this, 10-week time period, which will be so critical, to drive attention, given the election.
Great. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit in that, one of the things that we're seeing with our clients is increased focus on special needs products and spending in those areas. And I know, Scott, this came up in your report from CompetiScan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, given this, and I know it can be a very profitable segment. Obviously, it's a very important segment as far as meeting the needs of these members. But Scott, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as how marketers are approaching this marketplace?
Yeah, as you said, it's a really important segment, and we're seeing a lot more outreach to individuals who fall in that income line. I think the Medicaid redetermination and how that's been a real big focal point for the last year has maybe put a little bit more of an emphasis on that. But we're seeing a lot of carriers really consistently saying, as opposed to previously when they would just use an imagery and say, if you have access to a Medicare card and a Medicaid card, then you should reach out to us. Now they're saying, don't leave these extra benefits out on the table. These are available to you. Please make sure that you are utilizing and taking advantage of everything that's available to you. And that's pretty consistent. It's bold-faced on a lot of these direct mail pieces that we're seeing. But we're seeing just a real big push in that space. And I think we're going to continue to see that as well, especially when it comes to metropolitan areas. Just the outreach is just that's kind of, it felt like this past AEP, it almost dwarfed the regular communications that we were seeing, because that is such a huge market. It's such a profitable market.
Great. And Michelle, what are you seeing from your vantage point?
So yeah, definitely seeing much or ever increasing competitive activity in that space. And what we're seeing working from a creative point of view is simplicity. Really need to focus on the message and really drop some of the cleverness or the ornamentation. We also see value in tapping into your brand's identity in the community. And these individuals are more likely to have probably experienced some deceptive marketing or not as clear marketing. So they're distrustful. Their health conditions are more complex. So again, that theme of trust and using data if you have a Medicaid population to help them feel comfortable that their specialists are going to still be in network, that their primary care will be in network, that they won't lose anything by switching from a Medicaid to a special needs plan.
Right. And Cindy, from a media standpoint, you see like United doing big TV buys, how do regional plans compete in
Sure.
this space against, that big money?
Yeah, sure. So, as video is still, a format that works extremely well for this audience. So we'll look to use video in, other types of formats, such as social, digital, particularly mobile, where they're spending a lot of time. But we also might, supplement with maybe some streaming audio. And again, that allows us, to get at, some of the ethnic audiences that are more likely to be DSNP consumers. And then back to, again, using first party, member data and uploading it to look for lookalike audiences, to find them on some of those digital platforms, such as social, streaming audio and video display.
Great.
A little out of home too sometimes works if budget
Sure.
allows, particularly in pockets of communities where we know these audiences are spending time.
Great. Scott, I want to go back to you and ask you, sometimes doing health plan marketing, you will see things and you'd be like, I've seen that a million times before. Seems like there's like a sea of sameness. And I wanted to get your kind of point about your kind of point of view on that. And the whole idea of, also why flashy doesn't necessarily sell when we're talking about Medicare communications to seniors. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so at Competican, we recently completed a survey with our panelists to see what the impressions were of 4 major national campaigns during the AEP. And I personally was kind of surprised because the one that stood out to me, I thought would perform the best. It was flashy. It had a lot of colors, it had a lot of detail, and then actually performed the worst because of the reasons that I stated. Consistently, the panelists that responded to our survey were saying that they wanted to see more clear and concise language. They wanted it presented very clearly on that first page, what benefits were available to them. The 2 that stood out the most, that were the best performers, they had very clear on their first page what benefits were available to the consumer. And then they just relied on a website, a phone number, something in terms of outreach that the consumer could contact them to learn some additional information. So they knew exactly what types of benefits they were going to be eligible for, potentially eligible for. They knew that there was going to be the possibility of a $0 premium, and they didn't have to scroll through or flip through 5 or 6 different pages to get that information. So it was an interesting view. It's just more simple and straightforward. It wasn't the most exciting piece, the one that stood out the most in terms of our panelist responses, but it was probably the most effective in terms of being able to present what was actually available to them in terms of benefits and services.
So Michelle, and that's great, great feedback and perspective, Scott. Michelle, from your standpoint, because we're marketers, right? We're trying to build a brand. So how do you build the brand and the brand personality, but still at the same time, to Scott's point, keep it simple and overall, right? Make sure that it makes the phones ring and that it's performing.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to simplicity, and more is not always more. And I think working with some of our clients, the challenge is having the confidence to slim down your communication and allowing the most important messages to come through. So in building the brand, I think we have to think about what is the experience of engaging with that direct mail piece. Is it delivering the right feeling, emotion, information? So more isn't always more. And being very clear in your communications, I think, is how you build your brand and break through.
Great. A big challenge that we've seen, and sometimes it's with Blue Cross Blue Shield brands, sometimes it's with other independents, but is keeping the folks that are in your commercial membership, converting them to Medicare when they age in. It doesn't always translate. Sometimes they think about the brand a little differently. But what can we do? It's kind of a age-old problem. What can marketers do better to make sure that you're keeping those folks when they age in from commercial into Medicare, whether it's incentives or working with brokers or whatever? And I'll kind of pose that to Scott first to get your perspective. Have you seen anything as far as from a communication standpoint that Competisan does that can shed some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in recent years, a lot of carriers have just started to really appreciate that they have this data available to them and they're able to market to these consumers well before anyone else is going to. And they're going to be inundated with a lot of agent marketing once they hit that initial enrollment period. So you want to get out ahead of that. You want to say, you know, we're a brand you trust, and hopefully they're a brand that you trust, and that they can consistently stay with the provider that they are comfortable with or the network that they're comfortable with. Like that's a lot of the messaging that we're seeing. And in addition to reaching out to consumers, we're seeing a lot more, and I think this was stated earlier, I forget by who, but the comfort level with the broker is really important here. And the carriers are making sure that the brokers have the resources to reach out to these consumers as they are nearing retirement so that they can get ahead of the marketing and they can say, you know, why don't you look into the Medicare Advantage plans that are available to you through maintaining this relationship. And I think that's a very important element of this. It's not just going to be the marketing because they're going to see a lot of direct mail. Having that personal relationship is going to be a very key component of this.
Great. Michelle, anything you want to add in that regard?
I might have a slightly contrarian point of view that being the incumbent might not always be a bonus. Because when you think about small and mid-sized companies, some of those health plans are not super benefit rich and they put a lot of onus on the employee to research how to access the care, how to control the costs. And there's a certain amount of frustration or dissatisfaction that can develop there. And I think most consumers are going to put the blame for that dissatisfaction on the health plan brand and not understand that it's a factor of the plan that their employer chose and designed. So I think we need to really partner with our commercial team members to hopefully put a education introduction plan in place starting at maybe age 63. So help the consumer start to realize what is out there for Medicare, have some conversations to potentially address or undo prior experiences, but also importantly from that commercial segment, tap into that data. Use it to personalize that direct mail. So instead of just saying, you know, you can enroll in 64-9, you can enroll in 64 9 years or 64 years and 9 months, and you can save XYZ dollars a month, and your provider is in network. Really make it simple for them to understand exactly what is in it for them. So I think those are some things that we can do to help increase the conversion rate of increase people sticking with the incumbent regional plan as they move into Medicare.
Great. And Morgan, this one's for you. Like, if we, you know, I think part of being successful is knowing which prospects are most likely to convert. And a lot of that has to do with data and data analysis. Can you talk a little bit about what Unite Us does with their health plan clients to kind of most effectively identify those folks that are most likely to convert? How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, so one of the best ways, to your point, to sort of understand those that are likely to convert and understand your core consumer segments is with data. And leveraging sort of a powerful consumer database, and on top of that, some of those predictive models that I've talked about can really drive an understanding of current membership and therefore inform strategies about attracting similar prospects. So we always recommend ahead of sort of developing that marketing campaign for AEP, for instance, it's important to do some deep analysis about who your members are and where they fall relative to the average consumer in your market. So that you can really pull apart those key indicators as it relates to demographic information, channel preference, psychographic attributes, so that you can tailor the whole strategy around this person and what they're like. In particular, I think another way in which to deploy this is appending some of these attributes and identifiers to your marketing list, so you can, get down to the individual level as it relates to channel preference and creative alignment and messaging. And obviously for those opportunity segments, which are going to be different than your current core consumer, it's sort of a different conversation. And we oftentimes sort of look at a variety of different factors. And in particular, we have a segmentation framework where we can sort of suss out, who is the next type of individual that we want to go after, and let's form a campaign around that.
Great. Jason, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think there's the piggyback on what Morgan was just saying is that, like, once you create these different audiences in these segments for the identifiers, it's important to preserve them all the way through the campaign. So that way, when you're kind of talking about whether it's media or marketing metrics or even stuff on the website, that you have different benchmarks for these different audiences, because there are different behaviors there. So that way, time on site maybe isn't as critical because they are a high propensity conversion and they just want the information and then they're going to call or something of that nature. So it's really just as best you can, as like the borrow phrase from Michelle, the juice has to be worth the squeeze, but to keep it separated to a degree so you can identify these different KPIs as they go through the journey.
Great. And then kind of back at you, Jason, like, how have the health plans that you've worked with, how have they leveraged data to best optimize the AEP spend?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing about AEP is that it really is a short period overall if you're kind of going into it hoping to deductively see the data to make a change. So what we prefer to do and what we found is, beneficial is go in with the hypothesis, as Scott was talking about, on a different subject a little while ago. If you go into it with a hypothesis and then you kind of plan out your optimizations and what you're going to do in advance, then that is the one guaranteed way that you can maximize the efficiency of your spend. And I think that the tough thing sometimes is putting that hypothesis out there and saying, hey, we want to learn this or that, and then we're going to make that change. But again, at the end of the day, if it's about driving incrementality or maximizing yield of the data, it's much easiest in that 10-week time frame to like script it out in advance and then operate like almost like an algorithm and say, when we hit this threshold, we're going to make this change, and just have it out there in advance rather than trying to decide in the moment.
And Morgan, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I like the point that Jason brought up, that since it is such a short period of time, it's hard to make those pivots and adjustments. So I think it reiterates the point that it's important to sort of get it right up front, which sometimes can be hard to do, but there are things that we can do to sort of ensure performance. And one of which is going to be I keep talking about predictive models, but there's a reason that they work, and leveraging those in your campaign can really help reduce wasteful marketing spend on those consumers that just aren't going to convert. Like, we just know that there's some people that it's not going to be for them. So allowing our customers to focus dollars on those prospects that have the most promise with those predictive models can allow them to, reduce spend on those that aren't going to convert and reinvest dollars, say on more direct mail drops or targeted digital ad spend, something else to really move that individual forward who's likely to convert. Another thing that we've seen with optimizing AEP spend is reallocating those savings dollars to those that, well, actually for retention campaigns. So it can be a great strategy to take the money that you've saved up front with your predictive model use and put it back into those existing members who might want to leave the campaign. I think all in, the savings upfront with effective prospect outreach, leveraging those predictive models, allows you to re-strategize dollars without sacrificing sales, which is often hard to do. So I'll leave it with
Great.
that.
And these are the questions that we had. I have like one bonus question here, and it's for Cindy. And it's you talked about a lot about the changing media landscape. How do you come up with the right media mix? And I know there's not a perfect answer to this, but how do you approach that when giving
Sure.
advice to clients?
Yeah, sure. So, we obviously, as Jason and Morgan mentioned, we definitely lean into, what we've seen has really driven, enrollments in the past. And, most of our clients, we've been working with them for several years. So we usually have, a good, a good amount of historical data to know what works and what doesn't work. I think we lean into that while still testing, new formats to see, are there more cost efficient ways to go after this audience? Those are, two of the big things. And then another piece is we usually always see, a mix of the awareness and lead gen tactics working in conjunction with each other, really help drive performance. So that's something that we typically always recommend. I know in a lot of cases when budgets are tight, clients like to lean into all the lead gen tactics, and that doesn't always work, particularly given, what we're up against, particularly with a lot of the nationals. So most of the plans that we're working on at Merge are, some of the smaller regional players that are, significantly outspent, by the competition. But again, it just comes down to also customization by market. All markets are very different. They have a very different mix of Medicare audiences, from income levels to ethnic makeup. So it's really customizing it, based on the target and really understanding, new ways they're looking and, where are they relying on information, what's trusted information, and balancing those.
Great. Morgan, we had a question. Can Morgan revisit the predictive model names that were aforementioned and list those examples?
Yeah, so we have a handful of models that we do offer our customers that are custom to their membership populations. Some examples of those would be likely to be an AEP sale, or likely to be a member of your plan, which can really be used in that AEP period. Another example of membership models that can be very useful is likely to disenroll. And that model can be used for retention campaigns, which can be really helpful for keeping, people in your plan that might want to leave. Some other examples of more standard models that we've built off of our consumer database, survey data, as well as book of business data would be items like likely to be on Medicare Advantage, likely to be on Med Sup, likely to respond to promotional mail. There's a variety of different models that you can tap into there, and they all sort of have particular use cases based on what your goal is. So for instance, if you're sending a direct mail piece for a campaign, it might make sense to use that promotional mail model. On the flip side, if you're really focusing messaging on something like a $0 premium or rich supplemental benefits or network flex, we also have models for those use cases as well. So hopefully that answers your question there, Nicholas.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. I just love hearing your guys' smart answers to these questions, and I do hope that this information was useful to all the folks that attended. So thanks again, Scott, for your participation, and Morgan for your participation too. We really appreciate it. And shameless plug, if anybody on the on the line is looking for marketing help, Merge would love to share our expertise with you all. But thanks again for the panelists, and I wish everybody on the panel and everybody who's watching the webinar a really successful 2025 AEP. So thanks again, and so long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.